more and more these days with the way insurance reimburses some of our services. We are limited to short-term training. Short-term training can be anything from giving a brochure, doing a 5-minute tutorial verbally back and forth with your individual, to having a lending library available for individuals. And this lending library can utilize books, computer-based programs that can be checked out, other available videos on hearing loss and communication strategies. An example of a very short tutorial that somebody could use is called, you would teach the acronym WATCH. And this would be like a 1-hour session, and you talk about what that acronym means, and you practice each piece of it. So W is watch the talker's mouth, not their eyes, but circle back to the mouth. A is ask specific questions, and you want to teach that individual to ask specific questions rather than the general what or huh. And when a person misses the information, if they can say specifically what they missed, and it may be I missed all of that or I missed part of it, that can very much help the communication partner. T is talk about your hearing loss. We've had patients that are they're just so reticent to talk about their hearing loss. I don't want to be a burden. And it sometimes takes just your talking to them to say, it's more of a burden when a person can't communicate with you and that communication partner feels feels frustrated. So talking about their hearing loss and getting them to be able to explain in a short term, some of you have heard me use the word spiel about their hearing loss. They also need to be able to assess the situation that they're in and change it if necessary. If they are in a crowded part of a restaurant where it's very loud, they need to either say, I'm not going to be able to hear you till we move into the quiet dining room around the corner. Or they may even have to ask for the music to be turned off in a situation. Or if they're in a shadow, they may, if the communication partner is in shadow, the listener may need to say, oh, you're in a bad light, I can't see you, we need to move. So changing the situation. And then the H is for acquiring knowledge about their own condition and healthcare in general. So teaching a short watch tutorial is a very effective way when you don't have a lot of time. Also, it is worth an investment to teach the communication partners some of these strategies. Different people will have partners that have different levels of ability to learn these strategies, but it can be very validating to have that person bring their communication partners into the therapy session. That therapy can sometimes at least foster empathy or an increased understanding of what it's like to hear with a hearing loss. Training is generally provided at the same time, and sometimes, right there in the session. Sometimes partners receive support and counseling about adjusting to changes in the family dynamics and the quality of life that the individual with the hearing loss is having. Depending on the needs of that frequent communication partner, you may really need to teach them speaking behaviors that are appropriate. I have spent, time in sessions where the communication partner is taught the principles of clear speech, which I am trying to model right now. So a little bit slower and very clear. They need to know that they should always be facing their communication partner and that it's not a good idea to cover the mouth. And breaking that habit of trying to talk from the other room is very, very intrinsic for partners. Empathy, having the partners try to lip read words or sentences can really up the empathy factor, or to have them listen in the presence of background noise, or there are demonstrations online of simulated hearing loss. And I think we have some examples of that I will make sure that you have available to you. Communication partners should also learn to avoid verbosity, to cut to the chase, make their messages simple and to the point, especially when there is a lot going on and there's some salient information they need to contribute. And that double check for comprehension. Did you get that phone number? Can you repeat it back so I can make sure you have it down right? Or tell me what you heard so I can make sure that we are on the same page. An effective repair is called a keyword strategy. So repeating a keyword to indicate what the topic of the conversation is can be very helpful. So for example, this is a topic right now that's on everybody's mind, and you might say, I'm going to talk a little bit about the coronavirus. Have you heard about it? And then the individual can say, oh yes, I've heard, it's in the news. So that kind of sets them and primes the individual for what you are about to say. Build from the known. So here's the rice. I'm going to make some rice for dinner tonight. So again, I might say, I'm talking about Starbucks. Did you go to the drive-through at Starbucks the other day? That can help. So if you build from the known, do something salient. Rephrase, use facial expression and hand gestures. That can be also very helpful. Training helps individuals. It's always difficult for us to measure, although we are charged with being able to prove our efficacy. Studies do report a reduction in perceived hearing-related disability after individuals have gone through training programs. And so from the research, if somebody's asking you, well, what are the benefits of training, when a person has had training, they're more likely to be compliant with wearing their device, or with at least trying to include some of these strategies. And you might see an increase in their ability to incorporate their strategies into the conversations that they use. Oh God. So we see people are more likely to engage in using those strategies that we have talked about. And in some of the studies that have used a rating of disability, early on, before people have had training, they rate themselves higher in perceived disability than after after training they complete the follow-up or the same survey again, and they seem to not rate themselves as highly disabled because they have felt that empowerment. We know that when hearing aid manufacturers or audiology companies or audiology offices provide training, they have fewer returns of the devices or the hearing aids themselves. And we also see that the communication partners report that they feel that they are doing, that they are more successful with the individual. So final thoughts here. We know that when people have communication strategies, they feel more empowered. They are more likely to use those strategies. Their engagement tends to be higher. But we do know that there's a lot of variability in this population. Some people just are difficult to change. Some people don't have meta-communication skills, and that will make it a little bit harder for the training. And then sometimes the most reluctant participants end up doing the best, and I would say that's probably your happiest outcome. So thanks for talking about communication strategies training with me.